speaker is Paula Shepard, waiting in the wings patiently. Her topic today is Fear Less, plan for the potential instead of the worst. She is an ICF certified leadership coach, speaker, and host of the highly rated podcast, The Confidence Sessions. I like the name of that. She helps values-driven business owners, career professionals, teams, and organizations speak and lead with bold confidence. She has worked with corporate, government, and nonprofit leaders to enhance their organizations while supporting them through their own personal growth. She is a seasoned professional, leveraging more than 20 years' experience in operational efficiency and program management, leading global cross-functional teams. She was recognized in 2021 by Brains magazine as one of 500 companies and influential leaders for entrepreneurial success, achievements, and dedication to helping others. Paula Shepard has a proven track record of supporting her clients to get the results they want and need while helping them make bold moves and communicate with confidence. Let's give a warm welcome to Paula Shepard. We're so glad you're here.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And if you can just give me a thumbs up, let me know that you can see
It looks
that.
perfect. It looks perfect.
Fantastic. And you'll be monitoring the chat for me?
I can.
I'm going to actually move this over here because I want to keep this a little interactive. So we're going to do this slightly differently since we're not live. So Paula Shepard. And here's the thing is I started in corporate America. Back in 2013, I was living in Maryland and I had spent most of my career working in government contracting. I thought that there was no way out for me. And I was single, a mother of two at 33 years old, and being divorced. I thought, this is it for me. I'd basically given up. I had climbed the corporate ladder. I went to college to get a good job and make a lot of money. And I had abandoned my original dream, which was for me to have a music career, to be on Broadway, to be on a stage. And here I was, successful in anyone's right, but by my own. And when I looked around, my kids were essentially living the life that I had when I grew up. And I thought something had to change. But the problem was that everywhere I looked, every time I planned, there was a challenge. And I'd always plan for the worry because when I would, then I knew or I thought that I would be okay. Until my father passed away in 2012. And in that time, I realized that it was my opportunity to make a change. So here's me in my corporate job, thinking that life is what it is. The hand that had been dealt to me, I had to just take it for what it was worth. But the reality was, I didn't want to take a risk. It was reckless. But really, the risk was required. And I want to take a quick minute to just poll you all and ask you, how many of you, type in the chat, think that or consider yourself a risk taker? Just type me in the chat. I want to get an idea of how many of you think that you fit that category, that you're brave enough, that you're taking risks, that you're putting yourself out there. Awesome. Not so much. And I am applauding your vulnerability. So there are no wrong answers here, right? When we get this baseline, this is great. That I'd like to be. Awesome. Thank you, David, for that. Okay. So how many of you went to college, had a degree or have some experience and are working in a field or looking in a field not related to what you intended to be in? Just type that's me in the chat. Oh my gosh, look how many. That's me, that's me, that's me. Yes, yes. And I hear this all the time. So suddenly we have a lot of brave folks in the room. You were all brave enough to do something differently than what you had originally planned. See, what we're taught about planning and being responsible is that we have to consider all these points of failure, and that when we do these, we have to make all these big investments to avoid something or lots of things that will go wrong. And what winds up happening is we get trapped in this mind trap, this loop of negative about what could potentially happen. And the way that that shows up for us in adulthood is we stop asking for what we want. And then we create these bucket lists of things that we want, but will never do, and accept this hand that's dealt to us. So the problem isn't that you're not brave enough or courageous enough. It's that we have this very narrow view and interpretation of what it looks like to take a risk. So we don't even realize when we're doing it. See, when we were kids, we just went for it. Do you remember that? Do you remember doing things, scraping your knee, riding the skateboard down the driveway? That was me. Doing crazy things that just felt really good. And if you can remember that you were born assertive, then you have the potential to not just survive, but thrive, not just in your professional life, but in your personal life, in your relationships. So here's the thing. In order for us to be that way, we can't get there if we don't know who we are. It is impossible for you to get what you want when you don't, at the core, know who you are. So we spend so much time shape-shifting into these people that we think other people want us to be or need us to be. And when we do that, we shift all of the variables around us without understanding the baseline, and we wind up with inaccurate data. So what I mean by that is this. I'm going to give you a really good example. I was standing in the closet and I was getting ready for an event. And maybe you can put yourself there because we've all been there. We're getting ready to go out, you're standing in the closet, and I'm thinking, what should I wear? And 20 minutes later, I am still in the closet with a pile of clothes on the floor, and it dawned on me what to wear. Know if I should, because I didn't know if I would fit in. And I paused for a moment. I realized that one way at work and one way at home and another way with friends and another way in the grocery store. But if I went to a party and everyone I knew was in the same room, I had no idea who I would be. And this was stopping me from making choices that felt really good, disappoint others. It was in that moment that I realized how much more value I put on how others might think of me and the choices that I make in my life, in my career, in my relationships, over what I think of myself. I want to take a little second here to ask you a question. Be really honest with yourself and chat word. And after this, you can write down 3 to 5 words, but write down 1 word about that describes who you are, not who others say you are, and not in the context of what others do for you or you do for others. This is who are you? And here's a great prompt for you to start that. What I know to be true about myself is that I am. What I know to be true about myself is that I am. Authentic. A bulldozer. Oh, Shannon, say more about that. Bulldozer. Enough, curious, precious, interested, empathetic. See, we have to commit to being these things. We have to commit to being honest instead of being popular. When we have the opportunity to be honest with ourselves, it gives us the potential to have purpose and to see possibility. See, we take in a lot of voices on the internet, on social media, on online forums, when we're looking for jobs, when we're trying to get advice. We're looking for the framework. We're looking for the blueprint. We're looking for what we should do. And it is easy for us to get lost in that based on what others think. We have this expectation that someone else is going to come to our rescue and they're going to save the day, when we haven't actually, with conviction, said what we want. Now, when I was working in my corporate job, before I left, maybe a year or two before, I had a manager who asked me to choose the path that I wanted to take in my career. And it was at that time that I realized I was disinterested in choosing one way. I could see all of the pathways for myself. And if I chose that one, I might miss every single opportunity. But I did it anyway. Choice. Go in one direction in that career. I hadn't yet set standards for myself to know what I wanted, to understand what my purpose was. I was still living it for someone else. And maybe you're doing that too. So how does this show up for you when you are working in a job or running a business or engaging in a relationship? Are you saying what you want? Are you sharing what you want? Are you doing what you think is right by someone else's terms? See, we focus on the possibilities and the potential. And when we do that, we forget about the fear. So when we focus on the possibilities and the potential, we forget about the fear. What is possible for you that you might not see? Ooh, okay, we've got some activity in the chat here. Okay, so there's curiosity, opportunity. So when we're curious, when we're able to ask the questions, we get to know ourselves, understand what we stand for. We're willing to stand up for that. And then we ask the questions that we need. So there was a time that networking wasn't for me. That was for people that were in business development. And as I worked in that job, I found myself feeling incredibly isolated, although I was surrounded by a lot of people. I wondered how I could meet others. I wondered what I could do. Now, this is pre-pandemic. I to go to a conference where I met a woman who invited me to a networking event. Now, the interesting thing about this networking event is that it was all entrepreneurs, and I was the only person in corporate. It expanded my mind in a lot of ways because they thought so differently than I had. I started to ask questions about how they got there, how did they sell, how did they learn? Wasn't giving them the education. And these new ideas, these facts, this information started to inform my thinking. So when you put yourself in a position where you are around other people who think bigger than you are, you allow these ideas, the facts, and the information that they have to inform your thinking in new ways and allow you to see things that you've never seen before. Now, it was after that time that I hired my very first coach. And then a year later, I was supporting clients in the evenings and on weekends. My entire life started to grow, and the way I thought expanded. My being comfortable with being complacent and being around others that had that same feeling made it so used to getting it right all the time and being on top that it was really hard for me to think outside of that. And when I was able to, and when we're able to start to consider what others or what, pardon me, when we're able to stop worrying about trying to get it right and start seeing the possibility, we stop taking no as our definitive answer. Now, this can feel a little rebellious. Say no or hear no and to go after it anyway. But this is in the context of your dreams and your vision for yourself. Now, in my career, I've been told no for years. So I had been corporate ladder. There was only so many places I could go. I raised my hand to get new certifications, to get education, and just kept going in the direction that I thought I was supposed to, that career track that I thought I was supposed to be in to continue to live my life. And I had been told no for years. Now, after that opportunity at that networking event, I found a network marketing company. And while I didn't know if it was for me, I knew I needed to meet new people. And I knew I needed a chance to do the things that I needed to do and wanted to be as a leader. And within a year, I found myself leading and training over 220 people. I was onboarding, I was developing team culture, and other people were doing the same. These were people who had never had that chance before. When you strive to keep your mind open to new ideas and new ways of doing things, just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean there isn't a better, more exciting way. Create that space and stay open. What do you want to do? What do you want to contribute? It's about understanding that this bold action that you take isn't standing on your soapbox and preaching about what you want or making decisions without regards for others. This is about aligning your beliefs with your words, taking action, and letting it speak for itself. So the more chances that you take, the less you will see the potential for anything to stop you. Now that you've got your roadmap, you're going to take your powerful idea and you're going to fuel this with courage. You are responsible for taking control of your life. So many times we're waiting for X to happen before we can do Y. And that is a surefire way for us to just suck the joy out of everything that we do. We have the plan, we've got to stick to it. And then when this happens, then we can this. When I make this much money, then I can go on that vacation. When I get to this position, then I can that. We're waiting for that exterior, that secondary thing to happen. Now, I have a daughter who has disabilities. And one day I was sitting in the neurologist's office and she said to me, she's never going to be able to read. She's never going to be able to function. She's never going to. It took years for me to realize that the ways that I advocated for her so that she could learn and read and do all the things that she was told she would never accomplish, I wasn't doing for myself. So when we sit and we wait to be recognized or chosen while we're executing someone else's plan, then we spend more time planning for the problem and waiting for the solutions to be handed to us. So which is riskier to you, the cost of being determined or the cost of being comfortable? And I started to ask myself these questions. What do you want to happen? What's the best possible thing that could happen if you take a chance? What do I risk by doing nothing? And how is following the plan reckless to my well-being and my vision? What's within my control? And how can I take that back now that I know who I am? And sometimes you have to do what's right instead of what's expected. And when you make these choices, instead of allowing them to be made for you, instead of excuses, your entire world expands. And this is a picture of my daughter. She came home to me in 2013 before we moved here. And I got a phone call from her teacher who told me that Michaela had been walking around telling everyone that she was moving to Austin. And they wanted to let me know that she was sharing this incredible, crazy information. And I told them that we were. I had no plan. I had no savings account. I had no job. I moved here. But I'm here. The job fell into place when I made the choice to take the risk and to follow my calling over my fear. Sometimes you have to do what's right instead of what's expected. When we spend our lives learning to do it someone else's way and being afraid to color outside of the lines, waiting for someone to save the day, we forget how brave we really are. A couple of months ago, after years of doing this self-awareness work and working with clients who I attracted who had neurodivergencies, many on the spectrum, brilliant, those with ADHD. I started to recognize some of that in myself and how my path had been so different than others. And I found myself sitting in front of a screen, tested, when I had one the letters would flash up on the screen, and my one job, click the space bar on every letter except for the X. That was it. That was the instruction. That was the plan. Easy. I can do this. And the letters started flashing up, and I clicked and clicked and clicked, and X. Oop, I did it. Okay, don't do that again. Click, 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 up, hit the X again. And I could feel myself getting frustrated, and I clicked and clicked and clicked and clicked, and every X that came up, I was clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking. 2 weeks later, I found out that my entire life I've been masking ADHD. So what if by trying to get it right, we're actually getting it wrong? Being here with you today, sharing this risk. Sharing that it would be disjointed and unclear, and that your perception would be different than what I'd hoped, that I'd get distracted from the point, and that I'd confuse you. But what if we, by trying to get it right, we're actually getting it wrong? Choose your North Star, go for it, and know that the off ramps are there. I'd love to stay in touch with you. Thank you so much. If you scan this barcode, it'll take you to my website, and it'll give you a couple of opportunities for us to interact together outside of this conversation.
That was a really interesting journey that I think resonated with an awful lot of people who let life get in the way of their original plans, responsibilities or expectations or finances. One of the people said, when you asked, well, who's a risk taker? And they said, it depends on if I've got a job or I don't have a job. And so you certainly were in a position where you had children, you had responsibilities. When I was in that same position, I took a safety net. I took a job I didn't want with the state and got stuck there for a long time. And you branched out and did something, took a risk. And now when you moved to Austin with no plan and no money and et cetera, what you got to Austin and what happened? What was your?
So there's a much longer story to me getting here to Austin, and I'll give you the abbreviated version as best as possible. So the company that I worked for, as it turned out, had a satellite office here in Austin. And I worked for a government contractor working on a position that wouldn't allow me to transfer. I got really excited that I was going to have this opportunity to maybe work here in a satellite office. This was my answer, because I could move and I could just transfer into a new space. And unfortunately, they had just done a lot of layoffs. And so the response I got back was, we'd love to have you, but we're not hiring. We've actually just laid a lot of people off. And I kept telling people I was moving, even though I had no job and I had no idea where I was going. Turned out that the manager that I briefed, the director that I briefed once a month for our reporting, had just been promoted. And I found out from our local staffing that he had, and that in his portfolio was the Austin office. And so I was able to go have a conversation with him and let him know my desire to stay with the company and move here, and that there wasn't a position available for me, but these were the things that I could offer. And what wound up happening was they created a position for me.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then what, now you no longer work for corporate. Now you are your own boss.
I am. Yes.
You're an entrepreneur, which seemed as though that was the right environment for you. And talk about making that transition.
Well, I actually left my corporate job during the pandemic. And the reason I did that was because everyone started working from home. So there was everyone was taking a risk at that time. Everything was risky at that time. And I was working essentially 2 full-time jobs. when I got started. I was seeing clients in the evenings and I was seeing clients on weekends. Plus, I was working my corporate leadership job during the day. So I wouldn't say that it was an easy transition by any means, but it was exciting. And that was the difference, is I got a taste of what it was like to be excited about what I did and not get in the car and drive to the office and do the same thing. I got outside of my own space. And so I had to make a choice at that moment. Now, I was the breadwinner in the family by far. I held all of the benefits. So I want to make it very clear that this wasn't, I had someone else who was holding down the fort. I was the one essentially holding down the fort in our household. So making that decision was a huge risk for us. But I also had to decide, was I going to stay where I was that felt safe, or was I going to move into a new space where I was thriving and happy?
Mm-hmm.
And so I chose the latter.
We've had quite a few speakers who have been in a similar situation. One is, she's a leadership coach now, but she had just won a huge award with her corporate job and seemed to be on a fast track up the ladder. And all of a sudden, right after she won the award, she got laid off. And somebody said, yeah, that's kind of what the company does, because they appreciate what you've done, but they really don't want you to fly too high. And so they clip your wings and they get rid of you. And she did what you did and started her own business and has been very successful in that as well. Also wanted to point out one other thing. Years and years ago, we had a speaker who was an executive coach, and he gave everybody in the group, which was close to 100 people at that time, and he gave them all some kind of a test. It was like a strength test or an interest test or something like that. I can't really remember, but one of our members said, I've tested high in every single thing, and so there's no direction for me. And he said, the people that do that very often are really, really bright. And she was in Mensa. She had a very high IQ, and they said, you're really bright. You can do everything. And so don't worry that you don't have a single direction right now. Choose something that makes you happy. Do it. You will probably, put all your energy in it. You'll probably be very successful. And then when you get bored, choose another one and do the same thing. But don't worry that you don't have a single path. And when you said that, you were sort of in that same area where part of it was maybe your ADHD, but part of it might be just that you're really bright, you're really creative, and you have interest in a lot of different areas. So it's hard to pin you down into a corporate role, maybe.
Well, I think in order for you to allow that creativity and that innovation to blossom, for you to see beyond the plan and the barriers, you have to give yourself space. And that's the most important thing, is most of us are not doing that. That's not what I was doing. My job was to create plans. My job was to mitigate risk. My job was to ensure that we were following that to the T. So it's very out of character and out of societal norms for us to make decisions depending on where you are, what job you're working for, what company you're in, what profession you have, what your family and your friends look like that surround you, for us to be able to go first. And by going first, I mean taking the chance, doing something against the status quo. And that doesn't take brilliance. It takes bravery.
Does anybody have a comment you'd like to make? There were lots of positive things in the chat, but anybody have a question or a comment you'd like to share?
I would love to comment on the closing statement that maybe if we're trying to do everything right, maybe we're doing it wrong. That absolutely resonated with me because as a child, my mother put me from public school to private school to magnet school back to public school. And it was almost like hands up, giving up. And that path was trying to get me to conform to what society's expectations were, what I was supposed to do in her eyes. So as an adult, it made it very difficult for me to try and be myself and take those risks to see what is it that I actually like? What would I excel at? What am I doing that's not, that's passion, that is my passion as opposed to just the job that pays the bills, right? So looking at that now, even years later, I'm thinking maybe I've been trying to do a lot of things, thinking that's the right way to do it because that's the cookie cutter mold that's been placed out there, but it's not necessarily the right thing for me. So it's a really good reminder to question what you think is right and is it really right for you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. One of the things I see people doing right now is, especially with talks of an impending recession, and people are looking for positions. Or I have had clients that have started businesses but are going back into corporate positions for a variety of reasons. Do you need that extra degree or certification? Is that the thing that you need on the pathway to where you're going? Or is there something else that you don't see? Is there something else that you want to do? Let's throw away the plan altogether. What would set your heart on fire? What would make you excited to get up in the morning? What would make you excited to, on Monday morning, bounce out of bed? And I know that's not going to happen every time, but to get out of bed on Monday morning and go there, because you can have it. I think we're taking what we can get when it comes to the job position. We see this thing and we go, but that'll be an income and I'll just take that because it's something. But what would happen if you defined what it was that you wanted and then you went after it? And you started looking for that thing. It's like when you go buy the car and you drive it off the lot and you think you're the only one with that car in that color, and suddenly everyone on the road seems to have it. You can do that for yourself when it comes to your dreams, and you can do that for yourself when it comes to the job that you want or the business that you want to build. But you have to be brave enough to put it on paper. You have to be brave enough to think it's possible for you, and it's not just an item that's going to die on your bucket list. So the question is, or the comment is that what's been difficult is relying on benefits from a large organization when you'd rather do something that you're passionate about. Can you say more about that? Is it that something that you want to do that doesn't exist that you see in a job that you could work for as an employee or a contractor? If you say a little bit more about that, Ruth Ann.
Right. It's hard to really gel it, but a lot of the jobs, a lot of the positions, even being in this job club, a lot of it's focused on tech, government, corporate. And when you're more of a creative mindset, or more of a science mindset, and you're trying to find something that fits with that, putting those things together, and it's like I say, it's not something that's totally gelled for me. But I'll be honest, I get scared and I gravitate back toward, well, I have to have stability for myself, and I'm older, and I finally took the leap and bought my own health insurance the other day, which is a really good thing. But I've been sick for a month, but I was planning on going back to work in January, but haven't made it. But now I'm anticipating my next move when I get better again. And I've had a couple of jobs that I was very passionate about. And I knew that feeling of getting out of bed in the morning and can't wait to get to work because you got to do this, that, and the other thing. But it's not more, it's not a dictated type of thing. You're not doing it because you have to, you're doing it because you want to. And I'm sure I could find that again, whether it's self-created or is something I find, but it doesn't always be, if you're in certain fields of interest, they don't always pay a realistic, like that job I was talking about. Quite honestly, that would have been maybe 12, 15 years ago, and it paid $10 an hour. You can't live on that. We all know that. Maybe it would pay 17 today, but that's really difficult when you're the sole breadwinner.
So I think what I hear you saying is that are finding it challenging for you to find something in that with a mission that you can get behind that would make you excited to get up in the morning. What is the mission that if you were to consider, I would like to work for a company that, what would be in that blank?
I don't know that it would be a company. It could be a nonprofit. It might have to be something that I make up myself. But what I'm trying to say is there's a balance between something you're passionate about and being realistic about income, benefits, like the needs that you have. There's a
yes, you do have to, yes, that is a non-negotiable, right? Because that's part of your self-care. So when I'm talking about a plan for yourself and knowing when to off ramp and all of those things and being brave and being bold, I don't mean be reckless in the way where you're not able to take care of yourself, right?
Oh, no, I didn't take it that way. It's just difficult. It's been very difficult for me to find that balance. I've tried a lot of different types of work, but the things I've been most passionate about don't pay a realistic enough salary. I guess that's what I'm saying. But
so what I would challenge, I'm going to challenge your thinking though. I think you haven't yet discovered a place that has a realistic salary or wage.
A place
yes, a space, a nonprofit, an organization, a company, something. You haven't yet discovered it. You are not aware of one yet. And so what does that look like? What would that look like for you? And that would be you getting really clear on what are the elements, what are those things that are non-negotiables for me? If I had a choice, I could have my way. And in a perfect world, this is what it would look like, because that's the bravest thing that you need to do first and foremost is to decide what that would look like.